It's a company that may soon be worth more than Facebook. San Francisco-based Uber is changing the way many people are getting around town. But how safe are their drivers?
Uber has been linked to several incidents, including the death of a 6-year-old girl in San Francisco. So what exactly are you signing up for when you get in an Uber car? Investigative reporter Elise Kirchner looked at drivers for Uber. Now, these are regular people who use their own cars to give rides.
They are, and working with investigative teams at our NBC stations in LA and Chicago, we found drivers across the country with criminal records that include burglary, domestic assault, and drug trafficking. That's even though Uber insists their background checks are stricter than taxi cabs. And when an UberX driver is in an accident, we also uncovered that you could be left paying the bill. They are on the move.
Pretty established company, about to go IPO. You expect them to have coverage when you're their customer.
Are you Uber? Ride services like Uber are taking over the transportation industry. Download the Uber app, click, and within minutes, a driver picks you up. How easy was it to get a job with Uber?
It's all of it by internet. When you add your name, you add your social security.
Bassem El-Batniji had been an UberX driver for 9 days when Jason Herrera summoned him from the Mission District in San Francisco.
We're heading to the Marina District to meet up with some other coworkers.
But within a mile, El-Batniji's white Prius smashed into another car, badly injuring him and Herrera.
All I remember was waking up inside the actual ambulance.
They've been left with hospital bills because El-Batniji's personal insurance wouldn't cover the accident, and Uber claims it's not their responsibility.
You buy a car, right? It comes with a warranty. You go step in a cab, you've got coverage. I step in an Uber car, and I got to question whether or not I'm going to be covered if there's an accident.
According to a lawsuit Herrera filed against Uber, El-Batniji's insurance denied liability because his policy excludes instances of driving for profit, meaning the former driver's personal insurance was worthless. He needed commercial insurance. Did you tell Uber that you only had personal insurance and not commercial insurance?
Yes. You know, it's not like a professional job they do. They do like hiding. If anything happened, they hide themselves.
Uber tells us they do carry $1 million of liability coverage per incident, which steps in as primary insurance if the driver's policy is not available for any reason, covering from the first dollar. And beyond questionable insurance policies, we found UberX drivers with questionable pasts and UberX customers who say they've been victimized.
Why don't you get in my face again?
In November, this passenger claimed driver Davia Whitmire was verbally abusive. He filed a police report, and now the district attorney's office is investigating. Whitmire's past record includes several drug arrests, multiple restraining orders, mandatory domestic violence programs, and time in state prison. Uber tells us Whitmire passed a background check.
He's just mad because I kicked you out.
But we found he was also on probation at the time of this incident for a drug charge, despite Uber's policy of rejecting applicants with a criminal record within the past 7 years. And we found even more drivers causing concern across the country. In Chicago, a driver operating without a valid license got pulled over with this passenger in the back seat.
I'd assume that there's at least a background check done, but I was a little pissed off.
This man also drove for UberX in Chicago despite 5 prior arrests and 2 burglary and disorderly conduct convictions. And in Los Angeles, we asked Beverly Locke to test the system. The reformed ex-con goes online and applies to become an UberX driver.
I was kind of baffled, still baffled how they let me in.
Her 20-year rap sheet includes burglary, cocaine possession, and she's still on probation for threatening someone with death or bodily injury, a violent past she admits to.
I pulled a girl out of a car and almost beat her to death.
But 4 weeks after applying, she gets the job with UberX. All indications show Uber has fired or suspended drivers when things have gone wrong, but publicly takes the stance that they are a technology company, not a transportation company, and in an email told us drivers are, quote, licensees of our software. So to Uber, the rules are different.
They destroyed my life. They didn't change my life. My car is gone. And also the insurance after this happened, they denied me.
I think it's a big risk, and I think the government needs to do something about it.
Now, the California Public Utilities Commission oversees ride services in the state. The agency requires commercial insurance, criminal background checks on drivers, and vehicle inspections. To help cover those costs, just last week, Uber announced it will bill UberX passengers a $1 Safe Rides fee. And one more note on this story, we discovered late yesterday that the driver of the other car in Herrera's incident is a relative of an NBC Bay Area employee. Raj, Jess, we requested an on-camera interview several times with Uber by phone and email, but they ultimately denied our multiple requests. This is Syed Musafar after being booked for reckless driving. According to his 2004 arrest report obtained by the investigative unit, he's described as showing a disregard for the safety of others, driving at a high rate of speed with his 3 children and wife in the vehicle. Musafar is being charged with vehicular manslaughter with gross negligence and failure to yield after police say the Uber driver hit and killed a 6-year-old on New Year's Eve in San Francisco. Nearly a decade ago, a reckless driving arrest took place on a Florida highway. Authorities witnessed the 57-year-old pulling into oncoming traffic to pass several cars and driving at an excess of 100 miles per hour in a 45. But according to Uber, he had a clean background check when he became an Uber partner. They use a consumer reporting agency called Higher Ease, which told us California law prevents them from reporting the arrest to Uber because it is more than 7 years old. Still, in a recent email, Uber told us, quote, Uber's background checks are stricter and safer than SFMTA's. That's the agency that oversees taxis in San Francisco. Their spokesperson told us cab drivers must have no prior convictions, and background checks go back for the entire adult life. There is no limit. 7 years would have shown up.
The taxi industry has recently been pointing fingers at rideshare companies like Uber, but many taxi companies have their own issues. Cabbies with questionable driving records allowed behind the wheel.
Investigative reporter Elise Kirshner has spent the last 7 months looking at the taxi industry in San Francisco and found a system in which consumer complaints are often ignored. Elise, it doesn't appear the city is holding these drivers accountable.
Yeah, we found that drivers often face few consequences. We went undercover and caught cab drivers with lengthy traffic records and found the city is failing to track the driving records of taxi drivers in San Francisco. Their license, city approved.
How long you been driving taxis?
San Francisco taxi cab drivers.
Was it hard to get a license to drive a taxi?
That we found also have lengthy traffic records. One is even on California's sex offender registry.
Sex offender status?
Yeah. And others that sometimes cross the line.
Did you see who hurt you?
No. As a taxi driver.
Adam Ludwig hailed down a yellow cab, but says the driver ran over his leg after refusing to drive him home.
He took off, took a sharp turn, knocked me over, and broke my left leg,
leaving the longtime runner with this titanium rod running from his knee to his ankle. Ludwig sued Yellow Cab. The company told us there were no yellow cabs at the time and location, and there are several pirate yellow cabs in San Francisco. Still, a jury awarded Ludwig $415,000 in damages. But the driver who ran Ludwig over was never found or held responsible.
He got away with his hit and run.
The investigative unit also discovered others with questionable driving habits. In a single day, we rode in more than a dozen cabs and pulled the driving records of each cabbie. Only 2 had clean records. We found 46 violations, ranging from no registration or valid license to running red lights. One driver even had 9 citations in just the last year and a half. 3 of those were for speeding.
If I got 9 citations in the last year and a half, my license would be suspended. How can a driver still have a license?
You know, I'd have to look into the specifics of the case. It's hard for me to respond just without knowing all the information.
Kate Torn is with the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency, which oversees taxis in the city. Torn says the agency can suspend or revoke a driver's permit. But the investigative unit also discovered SFMTA only requires driving records from the DMV for new applicants, or when a driver is applying for a medallion.
Public safety is really important to us. We take it seriously, and if there's anything we need to investigate, we'd like to get that information and look into it.
According to her, the agency also relies on public complaints and takes action accordingly. But we dug through hundreds of public complaints and found SFMTA is often slow to follow up. Despite reports of unsafe driving, fare refusal, and rude or discourteous behavior, the majority of the time the city just advises a driver of a complaint. 2% of the time a citation is issued, and fewer than 1% have their taxi permit suspended.
What would a driver have to do to actually have their permit suspended or revoked?
Well, again, there's a system in place, and they would, I'm not prepared to answer immediately.
Turin does say that drivers have to pass a driving test and, quote, have no prior convictions of a crime that would, in the judgment of the SFMTA, present a risk to public safety, meaning it's up to the discretion of the agency to decide whether the driver is dangerous.
Are you aware that you have a registered sex offender as a medallion holder?
I don't want to comment on any specific individual, so I just want to be broad in my response.
Well, I think the public would be surprised to know that.
Well, I'm aware that there may be an individual, and this is something that has, again, everybody has due process.
This taxi driver was convicted of a felony after he arranged to meet a minor for sex. We asked him how he got through the permitting process.
I've been honest with him.
Okay, so you told him.
SFMTA decided he wasn't a public risk and allowed him to become a medallion holder in San Francisco. But Adam Ludwig says whether it's a criminal past or dangerous driving habits, it appears the system allows some San Francisco taxi drivers to avoid accountability.
It sounds like what's going on there is the result of lax enforcement.
It doesn't seem that there is a huge consequence.
Well, I'll certainly look into this and see if we have taken appropriate action, and I feel going forward, then that's what we can focus on.
And in the meantime, if you have a problem with a taxi or the driver, SFMTA still is urging the public to file a complaint. Keep in mind, cabs do have cameras, but the recording is only kept for 72 hours. So make sure you make that request for the video as soon as possible. For more information on taxi safety, just go to our website, NBCBayArea.com. That's where you'll find an interactive map showing the number of deadly taxi-related accidents in San Francisco, Santa Clara, and Los Angeles. Elise Kirshner, NBC Bay Area News.
Drivers for ride services with criminal records and other proper insurance. It's just some of the problems we first exposed to you last month.
Now, more backlash against companies like Uber at the airport. Elise Kirshner joins us with why people are being urged not to get in these cars. Elise.
Every day, airport officials are finding drivers from UberX, Lyft, and others who are operating illegally at SFO. They even discovered ride service drivers without valid driver's licenses, unregistered vehicles, and no car insurance. So we went undercover and found plenty of drivers ignoring the rules.
It didn't take long to spot them. Ride service drivers from Lyft.
Excuse me, sir. Are you with Lyft? You're with Lyft?
Yeah. And UberX.
What are you, Uber Black or Uber X? You're Uber X. And you think it's okay?
Yeah.
Also known as TNCs. Drivers use their own vehicles and cell phone apps to connect with those in need of a ride, and they happen to be trespassing at San Francisco International Airport.
You have to have certain permits and certain state authorizations to pick up at the airport, otherwise you're trespassing.
We saw them dropping off, picking up.
This is my second week.
As an Uber driver?
Yes.
Even trying to get our business.
Unless somebody busts me right now, you guys are. You have the Lyft app on your phone?
Yeah.
So you're willing just to break the law if we get in right now?
It's a gray zone,
TNC drivers are not allowed to come into the airport and pick up passengers.
San Francisco Police Commander Richard Correa says there is nothing gray about it. Ride service drivers shouldn't operate here or at any airport in California without a valid permit, something that taxis, limos, and other ride services already have to do.
We want to know, who those drivers are. Are those vehicles safe? Are they insured? Are they properly permitted by the state?
In order to get permitted, some of the requirements include clearly displaying the company name on the car, having proof of valid insurance, and showing that it's a prearranged ride.
The first time they come in here without a permit, they've committed a misdemeanor.
Since mid-April, airport officials have identified more than 250 ride service drivers without permits. The majority of drivers were with Uber, followed by Lyft, Sidecar, and Wings. Not only that, but they've discovered drivers without insurance, a valid driver's license, UberX drivers borrowing cars, and sharing company-issued phones with several people that aren't approved UberX drivers, and even a driver who was not legally in the U.S.
I was kind of baffled, still baffled how they let me in.
And as we revealed last month, the investigative unit found UberX drivers throughout the country with criminal records. That's even though Uber insists their background checks are stricter than taxi cabs and claim to have better insurance policies should something go wrong.
Who's driving the car, and is it a safe vehicle? I think are all important questions that one would ask getting in a car. That's why we regulate these things.
But according to this letter sent to San Francisco Mayor Ed Lee last week, the heads of Uber, Lyft, and Sidecar disagree with the airport's permit requirements. They argue SFO is asking for too much access to its customers' confidential information and will only allow TNC drivers to drop off passengers on airport grounds. They want Mayor Ed Lee to facilitate a discussion between the airport and the TNCs.
Who are you with?
For now, TNC drivers continue to operate at the airport, while police warn the public not to use the ride service companies, something passengers like this don't realize is against the law at the airport.
Did they tell you that they're not supposed to take you to the airport? No.
You put yourself at risk if you're going to get in a car that you don't know whether the driver has a license or not, whether that car is insured, who that driver is.
We also discovered officials at Oakland, San Jose, and Los Angeles airports are now citing ride service drivers operating without permits. At LAX, police there even found one driver was a registered sex offender and was at the airport to pick up a 22-year-old woman who was traveling alone. We did request on-camera interviews with all the companies mentioned in this report. Not one would agree to sit down with us.
Harsh words tonight for ride service companies like Uber and Lyft. San Francisco's district attorney is speaking out for the first time, pledging to crack down on drivers behaving badly and pushing for stricter insurance requirements. Investigative reporter Elise Kirshner joins us now live. And Elise, you've been looking at this emerging industry for months now. This is a big move.
It is. This morning, the district attorney filed charges against an UberX driver who allegedly verbally assaulted a passenger last fall. And now he's pushing for stricter regulation on the industry.
Why don't you get in my face again, like you did before?
Last fall, this passenger claimed that UberX driver Davia Whitmire was verbally abusive. A police report was filed, but no charges until today. Whitmire is facing battery on a transit passenger, a misdemeanor. It even took his attorney by surprise.
At the time that this incident took place, in fact, the police decided that they didn't even want to cite him for this incident.
In April, the investigative unit found before becoming an UberX driver, Whitmire had served time in prison for drug charges, and we found other drivers across the country with criminal records. That's despite Uber's policy of running background checks on all applicants and disqualifying anyone with a criminal record in the past 7 years. District Attorney George Gascon says law enforcement will now be stepping up efforts to regulate ride service drivers.
We want to send a very clear message that, you know, this is an industry that is also growing, is making a lot of money. They have to be a good corporate citizen.
The California Public Utilities Commission currently regulates ride service companies, which uses cell phone apps to connect with those in need of a ride. Gascon is now working with the CPUC to implement stricter hiring practices and insurance policy requirements.
In the meantime, how do passengers know they're safe?
It's a good question. I think that they really don't know at this point. We have no way of guaranteeing anyone that the people that are driving these vehicles are going to be someone that is reliable.
Now, the district attorney says he hopes stricter regulations are implemented later this year. Now, we've also discovered that today an UberX driver in LA was arrested on suspicion of kidnapping a woman and taking her to a motel room. In response, Uber told us it's unclear if this is an Uber-related incident. They're working with authorities, and nothing is more important than the safety of their riders. Live in the newsroom, Elise Kirshner, NBC Bay Area News.